Right, hello and welcome to, well, I probably don't need to mention where I'm at because the sign can already tell you. Well, I mean it says Phorum Pier, but we're actually in a town called Bilton. Yes, as the older train simulator players will be able to tell, this is the I'm on the old Phorum Peninsula route today. Some of you might have seen a while ago I posted a video on the updated version of this route, which is part of the London Transport Heritage Collection, which I still think is a complete and utter farce. Anyway, so as you can tell, I'm on one of the narrow gauge sections today, and the only reason I am is because I got a comment on my video where I drove the Blue Pullman on the Coniston branch asking for some more narrow gauge lines. Well, so here you go. I hope this will do the trick. Anyway, so in this run I'll be going from, what is it, I think, yeah, Phorum Pier to Gray's Point on one of two narrow gauge lines. First of all, there's a standard gauge line running around this island, as it were, and this is the engine that's running on it today. That was the Caledonian Railway 422 number 123, albeit in LNS lined black, as she carried, I think, between 1923 and 1935. As you can tell, the engine that I'm going to be driving is from the Ffestiniog Railway. This one is, I think that's pronounced Taliesin, but I'm not sure exactly. As we go, I'll explain more as we go along. Looks like we're good to go, so might as well. Yeah, just notice this is actually a pretty short line. It's not, Gray's Point is the terminus, and as you can tell, it's not even 2 miles long. Now, one thing I don't like about these Ffestiniog engines is that they always start, when you load them up in this scenario, they always start with the handbrakes on. So you have to, well, sometimes I forget to take the handbrakes off before I start to move, which is always a nuisance. Leaving Phorum Pier now and heading up the line. I'm not sure if you noticed from the opening shot, but over there is another pier, and this one has the tram line on it, which is, as you can tell from the overhead wires. This pier that we just started out from is like the old. I think it's like meant to be the old. Old pier built out of concrete, surprisingly. Anyway, so as you can tell, we're pulling 3 coaches. The reason... Oh, I'm going to talk about this observation coach for a little bit, because it reminds me of... This is passenger... this is nice, the passenger view is actually in the observation coach, so you get to look back down the line as you go along. That's one thing I forgot to... This is the view. As you come out of the pier, you do go up quite a steep gradient to 154. Steepest gradient on this route, surprisingly. Just round the corner from here, the standard gauge line gets as steep as 138, if my memory serves me right. It's quite steep when you think about it. Well, certainly steep by railway standards. When I drove the 1938 stock over the updated version of this route, I was going down the 138. Mind you, the 1938 stock can't even accelerate on 1 in 30. I think it's like 1 in 54 climb out of the docks up on the northern side of the island, going up towards Pedalstown, or Channel as it's called in the updated version. I was about to list one major problem we have with the LT Heritage route, but I suggest that you go. Well, if I remember, I'll post a link to my review of that DLC on Steam. It's not a positive review, to say the least. Here's the boiler water. I've just noticed we've only got 80 gallons left in the tanks. I'm fairly certain there's more. Well, I'm fairly certain the real Taliesin has more than just 80 gallons. I mean, that's the sort of water capacity I would expect to see on an engine on like a 7 1/4 inch gauge miniature railway or something. Mind you, even then I think 80 gallons might be too much for one of those engines. So as for, well, I feel I should mention that this scenario that I'm playing, I think it's one that came with the Phorum Peninsula route itself, but I have obviously modified it by swapping out the default narrow gauge rolling stock with Ffestiniog equipment and swapping out the default S100 tank engine with the Caledonian single-wheeler. S123 is something I don't know. So I think what we have to do in this scenario is drive from Phorum Pier to Gray's Point, then leave the coaches at Gray's Point while we take the engine back up the line to the crossing loop, which we haven't gone through yet. Refuel, fill up with coal and water before going back to Gray's Point. I think as we remember from the introduction scenario to this line, it points out certain landmarks along the way. I remember the intro to, I think it was just the standard gauge line, that mentioned that only the narrow gauge line goes further south from St. Bilton, and over there is some sort. I think in the scenario it's called Fort Wilkinson. Must be some sort of military situation. Well, in this instance, or I don't really know what terms the military uses. So this is where we're going to be coming back to refuel the engine. So I probably should be wary of the amount of water I'm using. I'll try to keep, if I remember, try to keep the water level above 90%. I should put some coal on the fire. One thing I've never liked about driving steam locomotives in Train Simulator, especially on engines like, what's an example? I guess the Caledonian Railway. Well, not really the Caledonian engines, like the Victory Works K1, which I was driving the other day, although I didn't bother to record that run. Anyway, one problem I've found with quite a few engines in Train Simulator is that when you open the firebox door, the firebox doors, if you will, it really does take hinder the frame rate. Mind you, I'm used to poor frame rates, even with the although I'm surprised that. Well, this is reasonably smooth for my computer, considering it's recording, and got a processor with the processor speed is only 2.7 gigahertz, when I think it's supposed to be like 3.3 or 3.5. Plus the fact that I've had this computer for over 5 years and is in desperate need of replacement. Strange. Stonehenge is somehow teleported onto a fictional island. Yeah, so anyway, as you can tell, we're going down a gradient, which means I need to obviously make sure we don't go over 25 miles an hour. As I was saying, one thing I was going to say earlier that I don't like about the modified version of this route that you get with the London Transport Heritage Collection is, despite the theme of London Transport, like, as you can tell, this doesn't look or feel even the slightest bit like London, which, yeah, I think is a major fail. Well, I mean, the idea of the London Transport themed pack is a good idea, but the execution was pretty terrible, to be perfectly honest. Mind you, it's Dovetail Games, what do you expect? Just look at how well Train Sim World has gone. Yeah, mind you, that's a completely different kettle of fish. I wonder if I might do a Train Sim World video again at some point. Although, obviously, I can only run that game on very low graphics set. For God's sake, there's another flipping plane going overhead. As I said in the Blue Pullman video, I'm not sure if the microphone is going to be able to pick up the sound of the plane, but I guess I'll just have to, I just hate to say it, I guess I'll just have to make like Steve Winwood and roll with it. Anyway, so here we are arriving at Grace Point. Now what you'll notice is that there aren't really any platforms, or at least there aren't in this view. If you go right up into the sky, you get platforms. Why they don't appear when the cameras are down on the ground is anyone's guess. This scenario where you have to refuel the engine after doing the passenger run reminds me of one of the packed ones that's included with the London Transport Heritage Collection. I think it's one of the two pannier tank scenarios, if my memory serves me right, where you have to do a run on this line, albeit obviously on the updated version this line has been converted to standard gauge, which is something I'm really not happy about. Mind you, it's not really all that big a complaint, considering the fact, well, considering that, for God's sake, I can't even remember what I was saying. So I just noticed this car's got paper for wheels. Not to mention the textures are very, very poor on this thing. Everyone gets off and makes their way to the inn. I assume by the inn they mean this building over here, even though it says the public house. Personally, I would rather have it say the sidings, even if it was a really silly name for a pub. If you get that reference, you get a cookie. Anyway, so that was the passengers unloaded. Well, passengers have disembarked, so we can uncouple the engine and proceed to the head shunt. Yeah, so as I was saying, that second pannier, that one of those pannier tank scenarios with the LT Heritage Pack is one where you have to drive from on this line, but the engine's like dangerously low in water. You have to make sure you get to the terminus, without using all your water. Because on the updated version there is a water tower. I'll try and stop exactly where I remember the water tower is. Although it might be a bit difficult because obviously I haven't driven on that part of the updated route for a while, so I don't really know exactly where to stop. As you can tell, there's a lighthouse out there. As is you typically find nearly said ice house then. You do typically find lighthouses on parts of land that are like this. And obviously over there is a paddle steamer, which actually looks quite nice. These lights around it, they remind me of like the coaches in that Game of Gnomes pack. No, that's not a reference to that's not necessarily a reference to Game of Thrones. It's the name of one of the two Christmas-themed DLC packs. Anyway, so might as well talk about this engine for a little bit. As I said earlier, as I said at the start of this run, more or less, this engine and the coaches are from the Ffestiniog Railway, which is obviously in North Wales. It runs from Portmadog to Blaenau Ffestiniog, and at both ends it has a connection with a standard gauge line. Although I'm not sure, I don't know, the line to Blaenau Ffestiniog is not the same one that also runs through Portmadog. Actually, come to think of it, I think the line through Portmadog is the one from, I think, Machynlleth to, what is it, Porthelly? I think that's it. Of course, I probably butchered. Apologies to any Welsh people that are watching this. I'm really not, I don't consider myself to be an expert on pronouncing Welsh place names. Anyway, so yeah, I think the standard gauge line that runs through Portmadog is the one that goes from Machynlleth to Porthelly. And I believe the line from Machynlleth going east heads towards like Shrewsbury. No, it's Birmingham. I don't know if that line goes through Shrewsbury, but yeah, pardon my ignorance. I'm not thinking even 19 miles an hour is quite fast for curves that need to be reasonably sharp. Yeah, so this is the map of the route. Up there is like the main line station. This part's going over the causeway. There's the dockyards. set up so that the cursor appears on the recording, but oh well, I guess I'll just have to watch the video afterwards. Anyway, so as you can tell, we're approaching Martin's Halt, although for some reason I always thought it was called Newman's Halt. Anyway, so yeah, as I pointed out when we were coming over from Phorum Pier, this is where we need to stop and refill the engine. I would have, well, I might make a scenario where you do a round trip, or a run from from Phorum Pier to Gray's Point and return, maybe using a different engine. As you might have been able to tell at the beginning, I put two other engines in the shed, again both from the Ffestiniog Railway. One was one of the so-called George England types, the 040 saddle tank plus tender, named I think it was Greens, which I think is Welsh pony. Essentially, if you know who Duke is, then you know what the George England engines are. So it looks like we have to top up on coal first. Yeah, so on the updated version of this route, this Martin's Halt has actually got a station, but for some reason it's called King Henry VIII Halt. Yeah, I think it's fair to say that Dovetail really didn't spend a lot of time thinking of a name for that. I mean, what has King Henry VIII got to do with a route that is an update of a very old, or much older route that is, the stations are decked out in network southeast condition, and yet the pack is supposed to have a London Transport theme. Now, have we stopped in the right place? The way Train Simulator works, like, obviously doesn't have this system where, or it doesn't animate it so that there are actually people shoveling coal into the bunker. But as I was saying, wait, no, it doesn't seem like we have taken coal. So, now we've stopped in the right place. So, as I was saying, this engine, well, what I haven't mentioned yet is that Taliesin is an unusual type of locomotive called a single-fairlie. Well, fairlie locomotives were, and to an extent still are, a type of articulated locomotive where, well, designed to negotiate much sharper curves than conventional tank engines. The driving wheels and therefore cylinders are actually mounted in like a steam powered bogie, as it were. You know how, well, like how you got bogies on diesel and electric locomotives, and basically all rolling stock that's used on railways today, apart from obviously steam locomotives which are mainline certified. With that, well, as I said, the steam bogie on the fairlie locomotives allowed them to negotiate much sharper curves. Anyway, so fairlie locomotives came in two different types. There's this one, which is a single-fairlie, which is closer to being a conventional locomotive than the other type of fairlie, which is called a double-fairlie. That's one where it's like, if anyone has seen the Thomas character Mighty Mac, he's a double-fairlie, where it's a single firebox, but it's got a boiler at each end, if that makes any sense. It's like a double-ended steam locomotive. Well, think of like Taliesin. What does that say? Your engine is now sorted for the next couple of runs. Recouple to the carriages at Gray's Point to the front of your engine. You'll be bringing them back after lunch. I'm just going to sit here for a little while while I talk about the fairlie engines. Anyway, so to get an idea of what a double fairlie looks like, just think of Taliesin, but like there's another power bogie and boiler on around here, like flipped around and stuck onto the back. Well, if you will. The firebox on the double fairlies goes right through the cab, so that there's very little room on each side from what I understand, despite the benefits of fairlie engines, they weren't all that common, as far as I know. I know there was some in Mexico. I think it was Mexico, which were quite big, from my memory, or based on what I've read. I think New Zealand had about 35 overall, which made them one of the largest users of single-fairlies. Yeah, it goes to show you just how common, or just how uncommon fairlie locomotives were. Of course, I believe the Ffestiniog Railway did, I think back in like the 1880s or 1890s, the Ffestiniog Railway did get single-fairlies. There is, I think the classes of single-fairlies in New Zealand were, I think there were 2 E-class double-fairlies. There was the B-class double-fairlies, which consisted of just 2 members, numbers 165 Lady Mordaunt and 238 Snake. Then there were the original Vulcan E-class of 1872. I honestly don't know when I'll have to read up again to find out when the B-class double-fairlies were built. But yeah, as I said, there were also 2 E-class locomotives built by the Vulcan foundry, I think in 1872. One of them was called Rose, although I don't think that one was given a number, and the other was the much more famous Josephine, or as I prefer to call it, E175. Apparently Rose was damaged in an accident only about a month after she arrived and ended up being scrapped. But E175 has gone against all the odds and survives in preservation even today. As far as I know, she's on display, I think, in the Otago Settlers Museum, which is not too far away from Dunedin, from the famous Dunedin railway station. There was a second type known as the E-class, and they were built by the Avonside Engine Company of Bristol. At least I think they were based in Bristol. The strange thing about the Avonside E's is that even though they were being withdrawn, officially withdrawn from service, about 2 or 3 of them actually carried on in service for at least another 16 years after being withdrawn. Don't know how that works either. There were 2 other E-classes built, used on the NZR, but I can't really be bothered. Well, those 2 are completely different, and I probably haven't got enough time to explain those 2. There were also 2 classes of single-fairlies, but unlike Taliesin, which is an 044, NZR's single-fairlies were 064s. The 2 types were known as the R and S classes respectively. I don't know much about either of them, but what I do know is that there is one R class single-fairlie in preservation, and that's R28, which I believe is, I don't know if she's on display or being restored, but I definitely know that she is in the town of Reefton, which is in the South Island. I was surprised. I'll be perfectly honest and say that until very, very recently, I thought Reefton was on the main Christchurch to Greymouth route, but then I found out more recently that it's actually on the line from Stillwater to Westport. Yes, I'm a bit of an idiot there. Anyway, I think a few of the S-class locomotives ended up in Western Australia, where they were reclassified as the I-class. But anyway, as I said, you might have been able to tell, but Taliesin's got something here, Boston Lodge Works, rebuilt in 1999. As far as I know, up until 1999, R28 was the only single-fairlie locomotive left in the world, but, until, obviously, Taliesin came along. But even so, that's pretty strange, isn't it? Like, there's only two single-fairlie locomotives left in the entire world. Again, Taliesin and R28. I'm going to actually stop before coupling up to the coaches because I'm trying to think of some other stuff to say. What am I going to say? Actually, no, I can't really think of anything to say, but yeah, the reason why I said earlier that I was going to talk about the observation coach is because what the hell is that? Hold on. Stop the engine. That's not terrifying in the slightest. Anyway, as I was going to say, the reason why I said it earlier I was going to talk about the observation coach is because I used to play, I think, what was it, Trains 2012, but I unfortunately don't play it anymore, and I used to play like the Island of Sodor routes quite often. One of them was the Caledonian Railway, and I think an observation coach of very similar model to this, heck, it might even be the same model. I remember this type of coach I used this type of coach on the Caledonian line, because I think for trains you used to be able to get like Caldy and Lord Harry, two of the mountain engines. Why they didn't do more is anyone's guess. Yeah, so I don't really know what else to say, to be perfectly honest, apart from, well, this has been a short run on one of the two narrow gauge lines on the Phorum Peninsula route. I hope you enjoyed, and well, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, depending on when I can get that uploaded. Well, I haven't even recorded a new video yet. Yeah, unfortunately, I think as soon as you couple to the coaches, the scenario is over. So I guess I'll say goodbye and thank you for watching again, and just leave you to watch Taliesin couple up to her coaches. Just get a screenshot here. Yep, it's all jolly good. Yeah, so for real this time, yeah, goodbye and thank you very much for watching.